What's going on, everybody? What's going on, everybody? It's your man Louie T, back for day 2 of the tampering period. Tomorrow is the new league year, so this is New Year's Eve for the National Football League. So we will delve into all that has transpired from where we left off yesterday, essentially. So we'll react to all of the news that has come out. We've had a couple of trades today, one significant one involving the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles and the Houston Texans. So for the second day in a row, the Houston Texans have been involved in an offensive lineman trade, trading away a piece of an offensive line that wasn't very good last year, but had some pieces, and two of the better pieces they've shipped away. I really don't know what the Texans are doing on the offensive line in front of CJ Stroud, but we'll see. They have to have a plan. That's the only thing you can convince yourself of if you're a Texans fan. Is they got to have a plan, right? We'll see what that plan looks like. But they must be rebuilding that offensive line from the ground up. They must have thought last year was an absolute abject disaster, which it was. But to get rid of the few pieces that were actually good, we'll see. They got a lot of work to do in front of CJ Stroud. This is the direct opposite of what they did last year, right? As for the Eagles, this is the second time they've been involved in a trade. Yesterday, it was Kenny Pickett. Today, CJ Gardner-Johnson. Interesting, being that he felt like one of the guys that was the heart and soul of that team. But I have my reasons why they did this thing, right? Daniel Jones is now an Indianapolis Colt. Who didn't see that coming? God, I hate the Indianapolis Colts. We'll talk about that. Jonathan Allen finds a new home in Minnesota, and Javon Holland kind of falls in line with the rest of those safety contracts we talked about yesterday, right? Trayvon Merrick is going to set the bar for this year's safety market, and everybody else kind of fell in line with that $15 million a year, the standard safety contract, 3 years, $45 million. Thought Javon Holland would get a little bit more. Should have known once he didn't get it right away on day one, right? Should have known. Anyway, I'm your man, Louie T, and you're locked into the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 489th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Back like cook crack, second day in a row. Tampering period of the NFL free agency underway. Second day, final day. Tomorrow is the start of the new league year, so this is New Year's Eve. All these deals that we've talked about over the last 2 days will become official. Trades will become official. Some releases of players who've been waiting to be granted their release will become official. And we'll start to see some of these things start to really get into full motion. As more deals happen, more things transpire, we will talk about them as they become newsworthy. But we're going to talk about some of the things, that happened yesterday, kind of recap some of those things. We'll talk about some of the things that happened today, because there were some things that took place today as well. Not a lot has happened today. I thought we would see a little bit more activity today than we have. Really haven't seen a ton of activity today, but we have seen some things transpire today, so we'll talk about those things as well. And as things start to come into focus, we'll talk about them, and we'll also talk about where we see some of these other dominoes falling, because there's still a lot of players left that need to find homes. So we will talk about that here in a bit. However, let's just go down the list of items as I look at some of these free agency trackers and kind of go through some of these things and discuss my feelings and thoughts on some of these moves. So we talked about Sam Darnold already. We talked about Justin Fields going to the Jets. Let's talk about Daniel Jones. He signed a 1-year, $14 million contract with the Indianapolis Colts. I saw this one coming a mile away. He's already got a nickname. Did you guys catch that? Indiana Jones. You oh my God. You know what really sucks about this is Indianapolis actually has a wealth of talent on the offensive side of football. I mean, they're loaded, man. When you think about it, like, this is why I wanted Justin Fields in Indianapolis. It would have been a great fit with head coach Shane Steichen for what he's able to do with mobile quarterbacks. I think Fields would have really thrived in that system. And then the amount of weapons he would have had to work with, it would have been the most he's seen in his NFL career, without question. He wasn't given a lot to work with in Pittsburgh last year. Obviously, in Chicago, it was a mess, right? He never had anything to work with in Chicago other than DJ Moore and the tight end, right? Cole Kmet. Like, that was the extent of what he was given in Chicago. They didn't really start adding real weapons until it was too late, right? Once they got Caleb Williams, they started to add all of these offensive weapons. But think about this in Indianapolis. They've got Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, Josh Downs. That's enough right there. And then the kid they drafted out of Texas last year in the second round. I can't remember his name. But that's 4 receivers, guys. I mean, they're loaded at receiver. Now, here's the thing. I'm not sure that any of those guys are a legitimate number one. I think Michael Pittman Jr. can pass as a low-grade 1. He gives me Alshon Jeffrey vibes from that perspective. He could pass as a low 1, so you can get away with it. Alec Pierce is one of the best deep threats in the NFL right now. Josh Downs can do everything, but his intermediate work is crazy because he can separate, and he's got tremendous speed and quickness. And then you've got the kid from Texas from last year. There you go, Adonai Mitchell. Thank you. So they've got so much talent in Indy, and they're wasting it. They're wasting it with Anthony Richardson and now Daniel Jones. It's sickening. It really, truly is sickening. We'll see what Daniel Jones is able to do. They're going to have to protect him. That's the first thing. The beauty of having a Justin Fields is you didn't have to protect him great because he can make something happen with his legs. And with the way that Shane Steichen is able to scheme it up with a mobile quarterback, it was going to open up things in the pass game if they would have went out and got Justin Fields. Instead, they got Daniel Jones, who can move. He's shown the ability to use his legs as well, but I still think you left some meat on the bone with this one. But if Daniel Jones can't succeed in Indy, he can't succeed anywhere. That's kind of how I feel about quarterbacks. If you can't cut it in Indy, in the worst division in football, there's no way you can cut it anywhere else. So this feels like Daniel Jones's last real opportunity to prove he can be a starting quarterback. This is his chance to be Baker Mayfield. This is his chance to be Sam Darnold. This is his chance to resurrect his career. This is his chance to be Geno Smith. This is it. Every one of those guys got a 1-year deal somewhere after being somewhere where they really didn't play, and they got another opportunity somewhere else, and they took full advantage of it, parlayed that 1-year deal into a long-term deal with that team, and got back into the graces of NFL teams as a legitimate NFL starter. This is Daniel Jones' final opportunity. He can't cut it in Indianapolis. He's done as a starter. He will be a career backup here moving forward. He'll get that opportunity. I expect them to sign draft a tight end this year to go along with that mix of receivers, JT Money in the backfield. I would draft a complimentary back to JT Money, one with some absolute wheels who can catch it out of the backfield, like a Travion Henderson. And that sounds too much like right because he's playing at Ohio State, so he'd be staying in the Midwest. He would be a great addition to that team. That'd be a great 1-2 punch. Travion Henderson and JT Money in Indy. So that to me was a really good destination for any free agent quarterback that had some wheels. Daniel Jones does have wheels. I wanted it to be Justin Fields. I thought they dropped the ball on that one, did Indy, but Daniel Jones is going to get a good opportunity. Let's see what he does with it. Zach Wilson, after we got off yesterday, he signed a 1-year, $6 million deal. So you see where this is going, right? Everybody else is getting 12 and 14, and Zach Wilson got $6 million. This man is on his last NFL legs. Okay. If he can't find a way to be serviceable in some regard in Miami, and we've seen how bad it's been at the backup quarterback position for Miami, and knowing that Tua Tagovailoa is your starting quarterback in front of you, you're probably going to play at some point if you're Zach Wilson, which for him is the worst thing that could happen to him. Because if he wants to stay in the league another 5 years, he just needs to be in obscurity on somebody's bench as the backup quarterback, never having to see the field in a meaningful capacity. That's how he can last. Because every time he has to play, he stinks. No, he stinks. And that's why he's down to $6 million. When you get down to single digits as a backup quarterback in this league, you're almost on the way out. You're one of two things. You're either just happy to be here on your way in, or you're on your way out. And unfortunately for Zach Wilson, he feels like he's on his way out. Josh Dobbs signs a 2-year, $8 million deal with the Patriots. He's another guy that has proven his worth in this league, but we saw so much of Josh Dobbs, what was it, 2 years ago, that he's proven what he is in this league, right? So they have no intentions of him playing, but he's a smart guy. I was on Bleacher Report when this deal happened, and I told them, I said this on Bleacher Report, and I kind of blew their minds. You could tell they hadn't thought about it yet, or maybe they did think about it, and they were like, damn, that's a really good idea. But and then it's funny because as soon as I said that, it had to be like 3-4 hours later, the Patriots come out and say that they are fielding offers for Joe Milton. And I said that at the time when they signed Josh Dobbs. We were on the panel on Bleacher Report, and they said, what do you think this means? And I'm like, the low-hanging fruit was, oh, well, they just want a veteran. They got Joe Milton. They got Drake May, 2 guys that were drafted last year. It's the blind leading the blind. You need a veteran in that locker room. They had Jacoby Brissett last year. He's moving on. So you need another, veteran to kind of break up that monotonous young energy and have someone in there that can show those guys how it's done in the league, how to prepare, how to train your body, your mind, et cetera, et cetera. And then in the event that something happens, you actually need a credible veteran that you can put in the game, right? I was like, nah, that's not what this is to me. Yes, you want all of those things. And yes, Drake May needs all of those things, but this is more about, hey, we trying to shop Joe Milton. This dude showed some ability in that Week 18 game against Buffalo. This man showed some ability last year in the preseason. His team's out here looking at Joe Milton like, hey, man, we might be able to do something with that. And the Patriots are the kings of taking a late-round quarterback and flipping him for something, a third-round pick. During the Brady era, nobody did it better. I've gone through the quarterbacks already, the Matt Castles and the Ryan Mallett's and the Jimmy Garoppolos. Like nobody did it better. Taking a guy, 3rd, 5th, 7th round, shining him up and flipping him for a 2nd, a 3rd round pick. Nobody did it better. And they're trying to do it again with Joe Milton here. So that's what I think this Dobbs moves is all about. We'll see what happens. But Jarrett Stidham re-signs in Denver on a 2-year, $12 million deal. I like that for him. I think he's found a home in Sean Payton's offense. Nick Mullins signed a 2-year, $6.5 million deal in Jacksonville. So he continues to find work. This is an interesting one. I was just having a conversation with somebody about the Chargers and what they were going to do at running back. Chargers signed Najee Harris on a 1-year, $5.25 million deal. That's interesting. I thought they were better off just doubling down at the running back position in the draft because they let go of Gus Edwards. They're not going to re-sign J.K. Dobbins. And I just assumed, oh, first round, take a back, and then, round 4, take another one. Why not? Well, they got Najee Harris on a 1-year deal. I hate it. He's the equivalent of Gus Edwards. Good luck with that. You still, like Najee Harris, it does not solve your problems. You still need a lead back if you're the Chargers. So I hope they're aware of this. The money suggests that they're aware of this, but we'll see what happens, right? Aaron Jones goes back to the Minnesota Vikings. We talked about that. That happened right at the very tail end of our show yesterday. Javonte Williams signed a 1-year deal with the Dallas Cowboys. I don't even know how to feel about that. Like, to me, he's the equivalent of Rico Dowdle. You didn't really upgrade the position at all with this move. I like Javonte Williams. I don't love Javonte Williams. And I feel the same way about him that I felt about Rico Dowdle by the end of the season. Like, okay, he's a quality NFL running back. You didn't do anything, though. But you need depth in this league. He provides them with some. This should not stop the Cowboys, and it doesn't, from drafting a running back. At some point in this draft, so many Cowboys fans assume that they're going to draft the first-round running back. I don't think that's going to happen, especially with Nick Martin or Zach Martin, retiring. And, that offensive line sort of, one thing you got to say about Dallas is they keep that offensive line, and they are not afraid to spend the first-round pick. Matter of fact, last year, Tyler Guyton, first-round pick. I think What's the name of that damn tackle they took a couple of years ago that they ended up playing at guard. He's been playing guard and tackle. I always call him Trey Smith. That is not his damn name. I can never remember his name. But I think that was a first-round pick as well, if I'm not mistaken. Like, they spend first-round picks on offense. They're the anti-Commanders in that regard. We refuse Tyler Smith. Thank you. Thank you, T-Roy88. They refuse do the Washington Commanders to spend the first-round pick on an offensive lineman. The last time they drafted a first-round offensive lineman was Brandon Sheriff back in 2015. They refused to spend offensive line picks on first-round picks on offensive linemen. The Cowboys, on the other hand, love to do so. And it's paid off huge dividends for them. And they'll spend it on whatever position, tackle, guard. Travis Frederick was a first-round pick as a center. We've seen them do it at guard, obviously with Zach Martin and Tyler Smith, right? They did it at tackle with Guyton last year. They did it with plenty of guys. Obviously, Tyron Smith, they did it with him, once upon a time. So they spend offensive line first-round picks. I wouldn't be shocked if they did it again. This move may allow them to feel comfortable taking a running back a little bit later instead of having to feel like you have to get one early. So we'll see. I don't hate the move. I just don't think it's a massive upgrade, right? Dare Ungabale re-signed with the Texans. Elijah Mitchell, that's a nice one. I think we talked about that yesterday. Signed a 1-year, $2.5 million deal with the Chiefs. And Samaje Perine. Now, this makes more sense. Remember, yesterday we had that erroneous report, and even the website SpotRack had, put it up there as well, that he had signed that 3-year, $22 million deal. I was like, that is crazy money for Samaje Perine. What the hell are we doing right now? Are we just throwing, like, if you're going to give Samaje Perine 3 years, 22, let me get some. Let me hold something. If we giving out that kind of money to Samaje Perine, let me hold something. You got it? Shit, if you giving it away, let me get some. This is more like it. Samaje Perine signs with the Bengals on a 2-year, $3.6 million deal. That's Samaje Perine money. not $22 million. That had, where the hell did that report come from? That was crazy. All right. So we talked about Devontae Adams yesterday, 2 years, $46 million to be a Ram. Chris Godwin, 3 years, $66 million. We talked about that yesterday. Marquise Hollywood Brown, 1 year, $7 million to go back to Kansas City. We talked about that yesterday. Darius Slayton, we did not talk about this, went back to the Giants on a 3-year, $36 million deal. That's a great move for the Giants. I would not have had an issue if he would have ended up here in Washington, but that's a good move by the Giants to keep Darius Slayton in-house. He's a quality NFL receiver. He's not a number one, probably shouldn't be looked at as a number two, but if you can get him as a third option, he's tremendous to me. De'Ami Brown, we talked about that yesterday, 1 year, $10 million in Jacksonville. Josh Palmer, I talked about how much I love that deal for Buffalo, 3 years, $36 million to become a Buffalo Bill. Tutu Atwell, we talked about that a while ago, that 1 year, $10 million deal to stay with Los Angeles. Ashton Dulin re-signs with the Colts on a 2-year, $6.5 million deal. Mac Hollins signs with the Patriots on a 2-year, $8.4 million deal. That was a guy that a lot of people started to talk about, a possible target for the Commanders. And I said, why would you do that when you already have Mac Hollins on the roster, or a guy that you can bring back on the roster? His name is Noah Brown. Like, they're the same guy. What are you doing if you do that? It doesn't make any sense. Braxton Berrios, 1 year, $1.8 million Texans deal. I think we talked about that yesterday. So now you go to the tight ends. We talked about Zach Ertz, 1 year, $6.5 million to go back to the Commanders. Love the Bengals re-signing Mike Gesicki on a 3-year, $25.5 million deal. That, to me, was a necessary thing that had to happen. John Bates back to Washington on a 3-year deal. Austin Hooper, we talked about that yesterday, 1 year, $5 million deal back to New England. Tommy Tremble back in Carolina on a 2-year, $10.5 million deal. So that's a good move for the Panthers. Talked about Luke Farrell signing a 3-year, $20.25 million deal. I said if John Bates would have hit the free agent market, that would have been him in San Francisco. That would have been him in San Francisco, getting that 3-year, $20 million deal, right? So Luke Farrell, new blocking tight end in San Francisco. Johnny Munt, 2 years, $5.5 million deal in Jacksonville. Hunter Long signs with the Jags on a 2-year, $5 million deal. Durham Smythe comes into Chicago to be their new blocking tight end, which means they're probably moving on from Mercedes Lewis. Chris Manhertz re-signs with the Giants, 1 year, $1.4 million. And Tanner Hudson stays with the Bengals on a 1 year, $1.25 million deal. Let's talk about centers. We talked about this one yesterday. It's a big move for the Bears. Drew Dahlman, 3 years, $42 million, as they have reinforced the interior of that offensive line. Traded for Joe Thuney, traded for a guard from the Rams, signed Drew Dahlman at center, and all of a sudden they have fortified the interior of that offensive line. Bradley Bozeman re-signs with the Chargers. Robert Hainsey. See. Looks like Tyrann Mathieu is back with the New Orleans Saints. So it looks like that just happened not too long ago. Robert Hainsey, we talked about this yesterday, 3 years, $21 million with the Jaguars. Ryan Kelly, this happened, I think, today. It might have happened yesterday. But Ryan Kelly, 2 years, $18 million with the Minnesota Vikings. They're doing some work along the offensive line. As a matter of fact, you could correct me if I'm wrong. I think they signed 2 former Indianapolis Colts to their offensive line. I think they signed Ryan Kelly as their new center, and I think they also signed Will Freeze. So I could be wrong about that, but I believe they've done that as well. In addition to, I think they also signed the former Eagle and Steeler, Eagle, and 49er defensive tackle. I can't think of his name. It'll come to me, or I'll get to it first. Evan Brown re-signs with the Cardinals on a 2-year, $11.5 million deal. So, tackle market went quick because there weren't a lot of guys available in the first place. So, Ronnie Stanley went back to Baltimore. We talked about that. Alaric Jackson went back to the Rams. We talked about that. Dan Moore stunned us yesterday. He probably had the most outrageous contract of the day yesterday because we knew Milton Williams was going to get overpaid. We knew that. Nobody had Dan Moore as the, like, Dan Moore's contract was more than Alaric Jackson and Ronnie Stanley's contract. No one had that on their bingo card. His 4-year, now again, in aggregate. Now you'd have to look at the numbers, how much is guaranteed, et cetera, to figure out what's what. But on average, Stanley got 20. Alaric Jackson just got south of 20. He got about 19 a year, roughly. And Moore got 20 and a half, roughly. Like, that's unbelievable. On a 4-year, $82 million deal with the Titans. That was a gross overpay. But again, when you're the Tennessee Titans, you do what you got to do. Jalen Moore, 2 years, $30 million to become the Chiefs' new left tackle, more likely than not. Morgan Moses signed a 3-year, $24 million deal with the Patriots. We talked about that yesterday. Patrick McCarry signed a 3-year, $37.5 million deal with Jacksonville. I don't think he's going to play tackle. I think he's going to be a guard for them, but we'll see. Chuma Udoga, Matt Peart, all these guys signed deals, but again, minor deals. Yeah, Will Freeze, 5 years, $88 million. He was the prize of the guard market. Young, talented, is coming off of an injury, but a really good offensive lineman. So Vikings, again, much like the Bears in that same division, fortifying that offensive line and putting tons of emphasis on being able to protect up front. Notice the trend with all these teams with young quarterbacks and what they're doing up front on the offensive line. Take notes. Aaron Banks signs a 4-year, $77 million deal with the Packers. We talked about that one yesterday, leaving the 49ers. Ben Bredesen re-signs with the Bucs. We talked about that yesterday. Austin Corbett back in Carolina on a 1-year, $3 million deal. Laken Tomlinson, 1-year, $4.25 million deal with the Texans. Alex Kappa signed. We talked about that when he first got released from Cincinnati. 2 years, $11 million. James Daniels, I didn't see this one. This is a new one for me. Signs a 3-year, $24 million deal with the Miami Dolphins. So leaves the Bears, goes to the Miami Dolphins. Okay. Moving on to edge rusher. Another elite premium position. I see somebody in the comment section says apparently Javon Holland turned down $21 million a year from Minnesota. Now, you got to remember, and I don't know if he intersected with him or not, but understand who their defensive coordinator is, Brian Flores. Understand his style of coaching. Javon Holland was the most outspoken player against Vic Fangio when he was in Miami because of his coaching style. And he vowed that he would never put himself in that position again if he had a choice. Meaning playing for a coach that was not, and some guys are different. Some guys don't want those types of coaches who aren't personable, who aren't relatable, who don't try to get to know their players. They just try to coach you and are kind of, standoffish, so to speak. And maybe that was the old Brian Flores. He's grown since his time in Miami, but I just know what Javon Holland said. He couldn't wait for them to get a new defensive coordinator when Vic Fangio was there. He couldn't wait for Vic Fangio to leave. And Brian Flores is his MO, his reputation is that of a coach like Vic Fangio. So just so we're on the same page, that's kind of why if that's true, I don't know if that's true or not. Don't know if that's true or not. Josh Sweat, 4 years, $76 million, which was actually a good deal, $19 million a year. I thought he would get more than that. So that's good money for Josh Sweat. Hassan Reddick, 1 year, $14 million from the Bucs. We talked about that yesterday. Khalil Mack, 1 year, $18 million to go back to the Chargers. We talked about that yesterday. Chase Young, we did not talk about this. 3 years, $51 million to re-sign with the Saints. Good for him. Good for New Orleans. They took a chance on him, took a flyer on Chase Young when his stock was as low as it could get last year, and it proved huge dividends. He played well for them. I think he got 6 sacks last year, tons of pressures. This is maybe what he needed. This was probably the change of scenery he needed, right? So let's see if he continues to play well or if that was just because he knew he was playing for a contract. We'll see what happens with Chase Young, but good for him. Malcolm Kuntz, we did not talk about this here. I talked about this on Bleacher Report, though. 1 year, $12 million to go back to the Raiders. I did not think he would get this much money, but this is the going rate for edge rushers who can get to the quarterback. Now, because Malcolm Kuntz was coming off of an injury, doesn't have a ton of production in his career, but you see the promise, you see the potential. That's what you're paying him for, knowing that he can potentially get to the quarterback. But I was shocked that he got that much. I thought he would have to prove it this year on some, $8 million type stuff. It could get to 10 with incentives if he hits certain mile markers. But 12, got the deal done. Good for him. Let's see if he performs the way that he did prior to the injury. Dio Odangbo, we talked about this yesterday, 3 years, $48 million to become a Chicago Bear. Harold Landry, we talked about that yesterday as well, 3 years, $43.5 million in New England. Baron Browning, I had mentioned this. I wasn't sure if this had taken place, but in fact did. 2 years, $15 million to go back to the Arizona Cardinals. Patrick Jones II, 2 years, $20 million to go to the Panthers. I like that deal for them. Marcus Davenport, 1 year, $2.5 million deal. Boy, has his stock fallen or what? So last year he signed a similar deal with them, and I think it was like $12 million. And then he promptly got injured and only played in like 2 or 3 games. So the Lions, this feels a lot like the Hollywood Brown situation in Kansas City, where Kansas City was like, yo, we're feeling Hollywood Brown. They gave him like $12 million last year. He gets injured, barely plays, and they're like, okay, run it back and see if you can really actually help this team. But we got to significantly cut that pay. So now Hollywood's at $7 million. Same with Davenport. I think this was a 1 year, $10 million contract last year. Gets injured, only plays in like 2 games. And then they're like, hey, we invested the time. We want to see what this looks like. You're supposed to be the guy opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, so we don't have that void on our team. But you're going to have to come back and prove it, bro, at a significantly less number, $2.5 million. I mean, he barely scratching the NFL vet number, so he's going to have to prove it. Chauncey Golson, a guy that I talked about looking out for. Again, always got to watch your stuff inside the division because nobody knows your stuff like other teams in the division. He gets a 3-year, $19.5 million deal from the Giants. Joe Troyan Shoyinka signs a 1-year, $4.75 million deal with the Browns. Joseph Osai is back in Cincinnati, 1 year, $7 million. Talked about this yesterday on Bleacher Report, I believe. Might have been last night with you guys on the Command Post. But Michael Hoyt, 3 years, $21 million in Buffalo. I like that deal for both parties involved. He's a good football player. This dude is like 285 playing linebacker. Like, that's a throwback. Out here looking like Levon Kirkland at the linebacker position, right? He can move for a big dude. He can scoop. I like that move for Michael Hoyt. Very versatile defender. 1 year, $4 million deal for Derek Barnett. Darrell Taylor stays or goes to the Texans on a 1 year, $5.25 million deal. So you transition from edge rusher to defensive tackle. Also, Odighizuwa re-signed in Dallas, 4 years, $80 million. Milton Williams, we talked about this yesterday, massive deal. This was probably the deal we expected, but it still was wow, right? The biggest overpay yesterday was Dan Moore. This was like unnecessarily, right? That was the Dan Moore. This one was the biggest overpay, but we expected it. Milton Williams, 4 years, $104 million. Good for him cashing in on that Super Bowl performance, but really he was good all of his rookie contract with the Philadelphia Eagles. This one happened today, early this morning. Jonathan Allen signs with the Minnesota Vikings on a 3-year, $60 million deal. Good for Jonathan Allen. I haven't seen the particulars of the deal to see how much of it is guaranteed money, but he was never getting that in Washington. So good for him. And I'll say this, if you're a Vikings fan out there watching this, I think he can thrive in that defense because Jonathan Allen is one of those defensive tackles that thrives off of chaos. A lot of his sacks come off of second reaction plays. They come after the pocket has been muddled and a quarterback's looking to escape and there's nowhere to go and there's Jonathan Allen to swallow him up. Pause. That defense that you play in Minnesota under Brian Flores creates havoc. It's helter-skelter. Guys are coming from all over the map. Quarterbacks are confused. They're disheveled. They're looking for an exit strategy, and that's when you run into John Allen. I think he's going to thrive in that system. He struggles when you just say, hey, go beat your guy one-on-one. He struggles. But when you're running twists and stunts and you're bringing guys from all over the place and the offensive line gets somewhat confused and scatterbrained, that's when he's able to defeat someone. That's when he's able to find his way free and get to the quarterback. I could easily see him having 9-10 sacks this year. He's never had double digits in his career, by the way. I could see him going back up to 8 or 9 this year, though, in that defensive scheme with all the pressure that you guys apply and bring. So I think it is a really, and that's why when we talked about the odds for Jonathan Allen, the Vikings were at the very top because there was definitely, I said he's going to the NFC North. There was a lot of interest in that North, and it ended up being the Minnesota Vikings. Tershawn Wharton, 3 years, $54 million with the Carolina Panthers. I love it for him. I love it for him. He's a good football player, man. He's a really good football player. I like what the Panthers have been doing in free agency too. They also signed Bobby Brown. We may get to that. We may get to that. We may not get to that. But they also signed Bobby Brown III from the Rams too. Grady Jarrett signed a 3-year, $43.5 million deal with the Bears. We talked about that yesterday. Javon Hargrave, that's the name I was trying to come up with. He is supposed to sign with the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings, you can see, again, emphasis being put on the trenches, both sides. They've spent money elsewhere as well, but definitely take care of business up front, both sides of the ball. Jaron Reed, 2 years, $22 million for the Seattle Seahawks. BJ Hill, 3 years, $33 million. Cincinnati Bengals, goes back to the Bengals. Poona Ford, 3 years, $30 million. That's a low-key good signing for the Rams. You lose Bobby Brown the third, you get Poona Ford, there's no drop-off. Love that move. Might even be an upgrade because Poona he be putting in that work. He be getting active. DJ Jones re-signs with the Broncos on a 3-year, $39 million deal. Kind of was eyeballing DJ Jones. Should he come free? It didn't happen. Roy Robertson Harris signs a 2-year, $10 million deal. 2 years ago, I would have loved this move. He's not the same guy he was 2-3 years ago, but such is life. Sheldon Rankins, 1 year, $5.25 million for the Texans. Bobby Brown III, I talked about this already. 3 years, $21 million with Carolina. So they're beefing it up. They're beefing it up. Javon Kinlaw, we talked about this yesterday. 3 years, $45 million with the Commanders. Sebastian Joseph Day re-signs with the Titans on a 1 year, $7.5 million deal. Tadarius Slayton signs with the Bengals on a 2 year, $15.1 million deal. He was really good with the Green Bay Packers, so that's a good signing for the Cincinnati Bengals. Adam Butler stays with the Raiders, 3 years, $16.5 million. And Tierre Tart re-signs with the Chargers. Thought he played well for them last year, so that makes a ton of sense. Now we go to linebackers. Zach Bond, 3 years, $51 million. Stays with the Eagles. Nick Bolton, 3 years, $45 million, stays with the Chiefs. Bobby Wagner, 1 year, $8 million, stays with the Commanders. We did not talk about this. Dre Greenlaw, 3 years, $35 million to go to the Denver Broncos. So they lost Barton. I think he went to the Titans, if I'm not mistaken, right? Cody Barton. And I thought Cody Barton played well. As Commanders fans, I ain't gonna lie, we were salty last year when we watched Cody Barton balling for the Denver Broncos, making plays, picking off passes. Like, where that shit was at last year? His old bum ass. He was balling last year for the Broncos, but he also cashed that in and went to Tennessee and got paid, right? So they had to replace him, and boy, did they ever with Dre Greenlaw. I like what the Broncos are doing in free agency right now. 3 years, $35 million for Dre Greenlaw. Levante David, 1 year, $10 million to go back to the Bucs. That was expected. He's a lifer, and he should finish his career in Tampa. Ernest Jones IV re-signs with the Seahawks on a 3 year, $28.5 million deal. We didn't talk about that, but I insinuated that would happen a week ago because I'm like, there's no way you trade for him. He's the brains of the operation. He went out there, balled for you. There's no way you're just going to let him walk in free agency. That doesn't make any sense. And it didn't, and that's why it didn't happen. He's back with the Seahawks. Jamien Sherwood. Remember I said this yesterday? I'm like, I think Jamien Sherwood signed, but I wasn't sure. I was like, I could have sworn I saw that he's re-signed with the Jets. I was right. Jamien Sherwood, Jets deal, 3 years, $45 million. So he is off the board as well. Derek Barnes re-signed with the Lions on a 3 year, $24 million deal. Robert Spillane. What did I tell you about Robert Spillane? I told y'all about Robert Spillane and Diablo Divine, right? Or Divine Diablo. I told y'all about both of those Raiders, right? I said I like both of those dudes. Both of those dudes got signed. Robert Spillane got 3 years, $33 million to go play for the New England Patriots. I love me some Robert Spillane. I told you he could play for me any day. Any day. Give me 11 Robert Spillanes on defense. I would get cooked, right? But give me 11 of them dudes. I just talked about Cody Barton parlaying that one season in Denver into a payday. 3 years, $21 million to go to the Tennessee Titans. He played well last year. And look, we can hate all we want. He played really well last year. He deserved that contract based off of what he did last season. I just talked about Divine Diablo, guy that I liked in Vegas. 2 years, $14 million to become an Atlanta Falcon. Man, I love me some Diablo. Damn, I love his game. Would have loved to have seen the Commanders add somebody like that to the mix. Landon Roberts, 1 year, $3 million to become a Raider. I would have loved to have added a Landon Roberts just for like goal line situations. To me, he's the best goal line linebacker. When a linebacker knows it's a run, I don't know if there's a better linebacker in the league than Landon Robinson or Roberts, excuse me. Chris Board, 2 years, $5.7 million deal with the Giants. Isaiah McDuffie, 2 years, $8 million back with the Packers. Akeem Davis Gaither, 2 years, $10 million to go to Arizona. Malik Harrison, 2 years, $10 million. That's an in-division signing there. He was a member of the Ravens. Now he's a member of the Steelers. How often do we see that happen? It happened last year, right, with Patrick Queen. It happens all the time in divisions, right? So those are your linebackers. And I think there are a couple more here. Like, I think I saw Oren Burks signed somewhere already, but it's not on this list. So I won't mention it because I'm not sure. It's like that Jamie and Sherwood thing yesterday where I wasn't sure, but I thought I saw it somewhere. So if I see it again somewhere, I'll mention it to you. Byron Murphy re-signed with the Vikings. We didn't talk about this yesterday. 3 years, $54 million. So that's a really good signing. And I wasn't sure if it was going to happen because they signed Isaiah Rodgers from the Eagles. And I was like, uh-oh. But I think that signing might have been more depth-based. And again, that's what he was in Philadelphia last year. And I think they also had Stephon Gilmore last year. He's not going to be back in Minnesota. So they still needed another corner anyway. So they bring back Murphy. They add Rodgers. The Vikings have been very active in free agency this year. They lost Cam Bynum, and then they just replaced him with they gave a safety. I think were they the team to give a safety 4 years, $60 million? Or is that what Cam Bynum got? 4 years, $60 million. I think Bynum got 4 years, 60 in Indy. I don't know if the Vikings replaced him yet or not. I thought they had signed a safety. Maybe if I keep going, I'll run into it. Carlton Davis, 3 years, $54 million with the Patriots. We talked about that yesterday. Charvarius Ward, we did not talk about this. I did talk about it last night on the Commander Show, but we did not talk about it here on this particular show. I was on Bleacher Report when this news broke, and I was up there with a couple of other content creators, one of which was Authentic. He's a Giants content creator, and he was reading where he went. Charvarius Ward. He's like, okay, we got breaking news. Charvarius Ward has signed a 3-year, $54 million deal with XYZ guaranteed. And he took so long. He was like drawing it out, and my heart's pacing, and it's racing, and I'm like, come on, I'm like spilling over in anticipation, right? I'm like, come on already. It's like he was going in slow motion. I'm like, bro, spit it out already. He says with the Indianapolis Colts, and my heart just dropped like, oh, shit. And again, I wanted Mike Jack, so I was straight at that time because he hadn't signed yet. But you know how I am. I like options. I like options. So that option was removed from the equation. That's a great signing for the Indianapolis Colts. Of all places, Indianapolis, it just didn't seem like that's where he would end up. But good for him. Good for the Colts. That's a really good signing. Paulson Adebo, 3 years, $54 million for Paulson Adebo. He is now a New York Giant. So we talked about that one yesterday. We didn't talk about the money. We didn't know what the money looked like. So now we can put actual figures to that deal. 3 years, $54 million. That's not a bad number for a young ascending corner. Again, assuming he's healthy from the broken femur, that is a really good signing potentially for the New York Giants. Little handsy down the field. I talked about that before, but boy, he can take it away with the best of them. He can take it away. Just checking social media to make sure nothing new has happened. All right. Let's keep it pushing.
Would you
All right, where was I? Oh, yeah. So we were on corners. DJ Reed signs a 3-year, $48 million deal with the Lions. We talked about it yesterday. We did not talk about this one yesterday. Brandon Stevens, 3 years, $36 million to go to the Jets from the Ravens. So they replaced DJ Reed with Brandon Stevens. We'll see how that works out. I actually thought Brandon Stevens was really solid for the Ravens, but he also had his struggles at times. I think you could probably say the same thing about DJ Reed. So we'll see if that ends up being a net gain, a net loss, or they break even on that move. Darius Slay, not officially released, but word on the street is he's going to Pittsburgh. We'll see if that happens or not. I was eyeballing Christian Fulton yesterday. I told you there are not a lot of guys left. Christian Fulton was one of the guys that I was intrigued by. So much for that. Christian Fulton signs a 2-year, $20 million deal with the Kansas City Chiefs. So he is off the board as well. Nate Hobbs, 4 years, $48 million to go to the Green Bay Packers. We talked about that yesterday. I really like Nate Hobbs a lot. So do the Green Bay Packers. And we talked about this because that deal feels like it spells the end of Jair Alexander in Green Bay. But again, it doesn't have to. It does not have to spell the end, but it feels like a move that is a precursor to them trying to move Jair Alexander. I don't see them cutting him. I don't see that happening. But I do see them trying to find a partner which they can trade and get rid of him. And if that happens, they've already got a guy in Nate Hobbs they feel good about. Jordan Lewis signed a 3-year, $30 million deal with Jacksonville. We talked about that yesterday. Michael Jackson Sr. This was my guy. This one hurt. This one hurt. Of all the free agent signings that have transpired over the last, this one hurt because I knew he would be cheap, and I thought he was the guy that we needed, opposite of Marshawn Lattimore. And it wasn't going to cost you a lot. Re-signed with the Panthers on a 2-year, $14.5 million deal. That's nothing for a starting NFL corner. That is peanuts for a starting NFL corner, which he is. Dante Jackson signs a 2-year, $13 million deal with the Chargers. Isaiah Rodgers signs a 2-year, $11 million deal with the Vikings. We talked about that already. Traymon Smith, 2 years, $6.5 million with the Texans. So Akilo Witherspoon is still out there. That's an interesting name if you're a Commanders fan. That's a guy that I would be okay with as well. Still available. Obviously, we still need to get something done with we still need to get something done with Noah Igbenogany. Safety. We did not talk about this. This happened today. This was a big one. Javon Holland signs a 3-year, $45 million deal with the New York Giants. Let's talk about this one for a second, because a lot of people thought he was going to be the guy to set the safety market this season, right? This offseason. So Patrick Ricard is back with the Ravens. I never thought he was going anywhere. When he got released, I was like, huh? Didn't understand that one. But apparently he is now back in Baltimore, where he belongs, because no one's going to love him quite like the Ravens love him. And you got to go where you're wanted, you got to go where you're loved, and you got to go where you're going to be properly utilized. So, but back to Javon Holland. 3 years, $45 million with the Giants. We thought he was going to be the one to set the safety market this year. It ended up being Trayvon Merrick in Carolina with 17. Matter of fact, 3 years, $51 million, so $17 million per, right? That set the safety market. Everybody else kind of fell in line. The standard operating contract this year for the safety, with any ability and merit, was 3 years, $45 million. That was the going rate for the safety in the market this year. And Holland fell right in line with that. I thought he would have ended up getting 3 years, $60 million, right? And be 20 million per, right? And be the guy to kind of be the pace setter for everyone. And it didn't happen. And now there are rumors circulating that he turned down 21 million or, north of 20 in Minnesota. I don't know how true that is, but he was on a podcast, at one point recently where he talked about what he was looking for in his next destination. And I said already, we talked about this on the podcast a long time ago. He was very vocal last offseason, as a matter of fact, about, being ecstatic that Vic Fangio was gone and he didn't want to play for another coach like Fangio. So again, that could have been part of the reasoning why Minnesota wasn't a great fit for him, potentially. But ultimately, he goes to the Giants, and a lot of Giants fans are kind of scratching their head, not because of the player, but because you moved on from Xavier McKinney a year ago, who was a captain and a leader in that locker room on the defensive side of football. Obviously, he's a playmaker. The man was tied for second in the league in interceptions this year, I think. At one point, he had like an interception a game. Like the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, I think he had an interception in every game. I think he ended last year with like 8 or 9 picks. It was a ridiculous season for Xavier McKinney in his first year in Green Bay. And the Giants just let him walk. And they did the same thing with Saquon Barkley. And Authentic talked about that yesterday on Bleacher Report, where he's like, we let the captain of the defense go in Xavier McKinney, and we let the captain of the offense and Saquon Barkley leave. And you've been kind of chasing ghosts ever since. And now you go out and sign Javon Holland. It almost feels like an overcorrection for letting Xavier McKinney walk last year. And they drafted the safety Tyler Nubin last year, and he's okay. But this is a guy that they'll probably pair with Tyler Nubin. But this feels like an overcorrection. And I think most Giants fans would have just rather had Xavier McKinney, if that makes sense. But it's a good signing. It's a good football player. And they get better with this move. And I think a lot of people are surprised at what the number was for him. And I could have told you that the number wasn't going to be higher than Trayvon Merrick based off of when he was signing, right? Like, you're not going to see any blockbuster deals today, right? Those were yesterday. Nobody is making $100 million that signs today, okay? That's a yesterday occurrence. You're probably not going to see anybody making 60 or 70 million today. You might get to 60. You're not going to see many guys making 70 million today, 80 million today. That was a yesterday thing. Okay? That was a yesterday thing. Now, if somebody gets traded and an extension is done, yeah, you could see those kind of numbers, right? If a Trey Hendrickson gets traded and then gets extended, you could see some numbers that can get up there kind of quick, right? If you see, you know, who is another player that could potentially get traded? I can't think of any more off the top of my head. But if you saw another player get traded and he wanted an extension, then you could see the numbers get up there. But just straight signing a guy, that was yesterday. So once Holland didn't get signed in day one, I was like, okay, that number is going to fall in line with the rest of these safeties. Maybe a little bit more. I was thinking, okay, maybe he gets to 48, right? Everybody else was at 15 a year. He gets to 16, 3 years, 48. Nope, he was 3 years, 45, just like everybody else. Good signing for the Giants, though, but maybe too little, too late. We'll see. Merrick, we talked about that, 3 years, $51 million. Paced the safety free agent market this year. Cam Bynum, we talked about that yesterday, 4 years, $60 million to go to Indianapolis. Talanoa Hufanga, 3 years, $45 million to sign with the Broncos. Really like what the Broncos have done this offseason. Talked about that yesterday. Jeremy Chin, 2 years, $16 million to go to the Raiders. We talked about that yesterday. We did not talk about that on this particular program because it happened after I left. But if you're a Commanders fan, you kind of saw the writing on the wall when he wasn't signed with the rest of the guys that they valued before the start of the tampering period, right? John Bates, Zach Ertz, Bobby Wagner, all of these guys, Tressway, all those guys were taken care of prior to the tampering period. Doesn't mean that they don't value some of the other guys that they have not re-signed yet, i.e. Olamide Zaccheaus, Noah Brown, Noah Igbenogany, some of the other names that we expect potentially to be back. Dante Fowler Jr., you're hoping, got your fingers crossed that he's back. But those are guys that they felt like we can wait on. They're not going anywhere. Not that they won't get a contract elsewhere, but we got time on those guys. Those aren't priority free agents where teams are going to make a beeline for them. We got time on those guys. Chin felt like a guy that if you want it back, you're going to have to do it prior to the tampering period because he's young, he's talented, and he's going into the prime of his career. So, and he played well for us last year. Again, not exceptional, but he played well for us. So there was going to be a market for him. There was, and he signed with the Raiders on a 2-year, $16 million deal. Andre Cisco, 1 year, $10 million deal to sign with the Jets. Marquise Bell re-signs with the Cowboys, 3 years, $9 million. Eric Murray signs with the Jaguars on a 3-year, $22.5 million deal. Will Harris signs with the Commanders on a 2-year, $8 million deal. So that's a new deal for the Commanders. It's not a needle mover for me, obviously. But it just tells you what they thought about with the safety position in terms of how much they were willing to spend. This was probably somewhere in line with what they offered Jeremy Chin. He's like, bro, are you serious? Are you kidding me? After what I just did for y'all last year? You understand I played in like 96% of your snaps last year, right? You're going to offer me less than $10 million on a 2-year deal? All right, I'm out. And again, I don't know what they offered him, but my guess is it couldn't have been much more than what they just offered Will Harris. So this is a non-needle moving deal for me. You just added another guy to the mix. Cool. I'm not upset by it, but I'm not, it doesn't move the needle at all, right? He doesn't change. Like yesterday, we got better. The Commanders got better, and they closed the gap between the Eagles. I said this on Bleacher Report. Whether you love the moves or not, the Commanders got better yesterday. And whether you think they closed the gap between them and the Eagles considerably or insignificantly, they closed the gap. I don't think they closed the gap significantly, but they closed the gap. And that's all you're looking to do is take a step forward every day. If we can close the gap between us and the Eagles 1% every day, then you keep doing that and you keep stacking those days on top of each other. You keep stacking up those bricks. Before you know it, you're right there, right? That bridge you've built to get closer to the Eagles, you're right there, right? They did that yesterday. This move doesn't get you any closer to the Philadelphia Eagles. This is more of a depth type of move. He may ultimately start for us, But I look at this as a depth signing. This isn't a needle moving, signing. We got news here. We just talked about the tight end position. Juwan Johnson is staying with the New Orleans Saints on a 3-year deal. I really thought that he was a piece that New Orleans needed to keep, and I said that he would be one of those guys that I felt like would be interesting in this tight end market, being that this is a deep tight end draft class. That I wanted to see how teams would respond to the tight end market. There wasn't a lot of money handed out in day one. He was going to be the guy that I thought could command the most money after Gesicki went back to Cincinnati. He goes back to New Orleans, makes a ton of sense. I wonder what the money looks like for Juwan Johnson. Oh, and Puka Nacua, not that this matters, is changing his number back to 12. We all know why. He is changing his number back to the number 12. Money, 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 money. Money, 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 money. Money. Get your bag, bro. You still ain't got your bag yet, so get your bag. However you can. So we left off at Will Harris signing with the Commanders. Afatu Melifonwu signed a 1-year, $4 million deal with the Dolphins. And that, my friends, McManus, we go to kickers real quick. Brandon McManus signed a 3-year, $15 million deal with the Packers. Zane Gonzalez back on a 1-year, $1.1 million deal with the Commanders. So that's, and punters. Punters are people too. Trustway back to the Commanders on a 1-year deal. J.K. Scott resigns with the Chargers. I thought they would resign J.K. Scott, right? 2 years, $6 million. Riley Dixon signs with the Bucks, 2 years, $6 million. And Jamie Gillen, the what do they call him? He's the Hammer. I can't remember what country he's from. Is he Australian? The Australian Hammer, some shit like that. 3 years, $9 million to remain with the Giants. So that's where we are. Juwan Johnson's deal is in. 3 years, $30.75 million is the deal. Can get to $34 million with incentives. 21 of it is guaranteed. Great move for Juwan Johnson. Even better for the New Orleans Saints. So looks like Leonard Floyd is getting released by the 49ers. So that's another guy at defense. I thought it was just a lot of veteran defensive ends, edge rushers that are available. So it's going to be interesting to see how many more people get released and how the market continues to shape itself as we get deeper into free agency. And let's talk about the trade now of CJ Gardner-Johnson to the Houston Texans. And let's get the particulars of that deal quickly. The Panthers have released Miles Sanders. It's funny, we was talking about this on Bleacher Report yesterday. The Panthers released Miles Sanders because we were talking about them needing to upgrade the running back position. They just paid Chuba Hubbard last year, well deserved, by the way. But one of the guys up there on the panel, he was the Eagles fan, content creator. He was like, "Don't they still have Miles Sanders?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but he doesn't count." They put his ass under the doghouse after the first year. So they finally are done with Miles Sanders. And he still can play. I just think he lost his confidence in Carolina. He lost his confidence. So it'd be interesting to see where he ends up. Be very interesting to see where he ends up. All right. So Eagles traded CJ Gardner-Johnson and a 6th-round pick in next year's draft, 2026. It's funny how many 2026. I'm telling y'all, the league is talking. The league is talking, and you have to listen. The league is talking about this year's draft. How many times have we seen teams swapping out 2026 picks? We haven't even gotten to the 2025 pick draft yet. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is the second draft, and maybe this is just how the Eagles operate. Because when they traded for Hassan Reddick, last year to the Jets, excuse me, it wasn't for a 2024 draft pick. I think it was for a 2025 draft pick. So I think the Eagles, when they operate in this space, generally they try to operate and get more draft capital for the following year's draft if they're going to do something. This is not the case because this was a pick swap, right? So they didn't gain another pick; they just moved up in the draft. If what I'm reading is correct, I believe these are for 2026 picks. Let me double check on that. I don't want to misspeak here. Let me see if I can get the let me see if I can get to the particulars of this deal. See if I can get to the particulars of that deal. See if Shefty has it. He should have it. Texans bringing back Mario Edwards on a 2-year, $9.5 million deal. All right. Let's see if we can get to the meat and potatoes of this thing. So, trade includes a pick swap with the Eagles getting a 2026 5th-round pick and the Texans getting a 2026 6th-round pick. So yes, it's a 2026. I think that's how the Eagles operate. And maybe that's not an indictment on this year's draft as much as it is just how the Eagles conduct business. Because if I'm not mistaken, when they traded Hassan Reddick with the Jets last year, it wasn't for a 2024 draft pick. They went to 2025, or it might have been the 2026. I think it was out there. Like they might be stockpiling picks in that 2026 draft on some NBA shit. Yeah, matter of fact, I'm curious. I'm actually curious now. Now I'm going down the rabbit hole. Here I go on some dog with a bone shit. Hassan Reddick trade to Jets. I bet you that was a 2026 pick. I knew it. It's like for a conditional 2020. They stockpiling picks in that 2026 draft. They up to something. They are up to something. I don't know what it is, but now it's a pick swap again, so they didn't gain a pick in 2026 like they did with that Jets trade, but they did move up, right? They did move up from the 6th round to the 5th round. So look, it is what it is. They up to something. I think they up to something, but so let's talk about this trade. So Kenyon Green and a 6th-round pick come back to the Texans. CJ Gardner-Johnson and a 5th-round pick come back to the Eagles, right? So you just win the Super Bowl with this dude. The year that you get rid of him, your defense falls the hell apart. You're not the same unit. When he's not in the lineup, you struggle on the back end. So why do this? You've proven already that he is one of those guys that is the pulse of that defense. Why do this? Because the man is a locker room cancer. That's why. The man is a guy that doesn't know how to shut up off the field. He's a guy that doesn't know when enough is enough on the field. He got tossed out of a game against the Commanders. You could argue not Jalen Hurts' presence not being there, but him not being there is the reason that they lost that game. Because after he got ejected from that game, defensively, they got shredded late in that third quarter into the fourth quarter. So he's a guy that they clearly needed on the back end. And he got into it with Darius Slay. He had some comments. I don't know if you guys saw that. Slay's probably not going to be there. But, about leadership, this, that, and the third, about having his back and all of that shit. And he's the kind of guy that can be divisive in a locker room. And when you're trying to build a culture, you don't want guys being influenced by someone like CJ Gardner-Johnson. You don't want guys having to pick a side in a locker room. He was a guy that, and I've said this about him, damn good football player, super emotional, doesn't know when to quit. He's like a Dennis Rodman, but in a league that doesn't promote that type of behavior. The NBA is a players-driven league. They want characters. They want guys that are different, right? They loved Rodman with different color hair and, nose piercings and all kinds of shit because he was a spectacle onto himself. The NFL does not promote that. They want uniformity. They want guys that do it the right way. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I'm not saying he's a bad dude. I don't think he's done anything off the field that suggests that he's not a good human being. But I can tell you by the shit that he does, he's probably not he's not a dude that has a lot of good, positive juju surrounding him. He's extremely petty, very vindictive, He goes out of his way. We saw the shit he did with Taylor Swift and all. He does ignorant shit that you're like, bro, why? What are you doing? And then now the shit kind of filters into the locker room with that whole, Darius Slay situation. You got AJ Brown out here having to defend people on social media, then going after the Eagles fans because of it. And a lot of this shit starts with CJ Gardner-Johnson. And it just gets to a point where you're like, okay, he's got to go. We don't have time for this shit. As good as he is and as valued a player as he is on the field, he's a headache off of it. Let's just move on. We don't need this. And that's what they did. And Kenyon Green, talented player, but has struggled in Houston. He's going to Stoutland U, guys. You know what's going to happen. He'll be next year's Mekhi Becton. They'll put him in at guard. They're not re-signing Mekhi Becton. They'll put him in there. He's cheap, right? He's still on his rookie contract. And he will play at a Pro Bowl level next year. Mark my words. Kenyon Green will go into Stoutland U. He'll go to class this offseason. And by the time the semester's over, you're like, shit, he got an A. He passed with flying colors. Might even be an honors graduate. That's why they went and got him. And in the process, rid themselves of a headache. So it's a win-win on their side. We'll see how it affects their defense. Because, again, he was a valuable piece of that defense on the field. But they feel like they're talented enough to replace him. They've done a great job of drafting. They feel like they can fix it. We'll see if that's true or not. They got Sidney Brown. Can Sidney Brown step in and play well? We'll see. Maybe they got to draft somebody. I mean, they're in a position where if they wanted to draft up for Eman Wari out of South Carolina, what's stopping them from doing it, right? Just our luck. They get rid of one guy and then get an athletic freak. I can see it happening, you know, but I digress. Let's get to the comment section. Powerful. Stand up. You are the newest member of the MOBB mob. You know what to do. Show Powerful some love. Welcome him with open arms. Welcome to the squad. Powerful. Glad to have you. The Black Al B. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Black Al B writes, yo, Lou, man, my GM woke me up with a hibachi prepared breakfast, laughing my ass off. Skull. We signed your boy. I need the deets. Forward me the tapes. LOL. I've already given you all you need to know about Jonathan Allen. He'll be solid against the run. Nothing great, nothing earth-shattering in that regard. He's no chump in the run game, but he's not going to be making a ton of plays in the run game either. Every now and again, he'll flash, get in the backfield, make a play if you allow him to. But where he's going to shine is in obvious passing situations when y'all get diabolical with a blitz and bring and create. Again, he thrives off of havoc. He thrives off of chaos. When shit starts to get wacky and a quarterback's kind of, you know, when a quarterback is looking for a way out, like you can see he's not comfortable. There's pressure coming off of, you know, a side. They can't pick it up. That's when, or you know, a quarterback eludes one guy. Here comes Jonathan Allen to clean it up. You know, or the offensive line gets somewhat confused. You know, the guard gets disheveled for 1 second. He looks to his right. Then he tries to look back to his left and get Jonathan Allen. Allen slapped his hands down. He's already past him. And now all of a sudden he's got pressure on the quarterback. And he's doing this shit. But you're gonna be pleased with what you get. I wouldn't be shocked if Jonathan Allen has 8.5 sacks this year, just off of the type of chaos that you guys can create. I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked at all. You guys have been getting active, getting busy in free agency. Your boy ain't tripping. I mean, your boy ain't playing this free agency period, man. Y'all getting to work. G-Dead Fan 88. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, come on, I got 5 on it. Sing it, baby. I got 5 on it. We going to the bowl. We going to the bowl. We going to the bowl. Anyway, thank you for the amazing Redskins content, LOL. I appreciate you for the support. I really, truly do. I like the moves made yesterday. We got a lot of things to get done. And I thought that, and there's still a lot of time today, but I thought that we would be more, you know, active today. I thought we would see some more moves made today. But I think what we're seeing is patience on the part of the Commanders, because they were never going to spend big money. That was never going to be what, and I tried to prepare a lot of you for that, right? I've been saying that for weeks. You need to temper your expectations. This year's free agency is going to look a lot like last year's free agency. And actually, this year's free agency has had more splashes than last year's free agency. We were just more active sooner, and we were continuously active last year. We had to be. This year, they've been selective, but they've made splashes with Deebo Samuel. They made another splash yesterday with Laramie Tunzel. And so while there have been less splashes, there have been bigger ones this year. Eventually, they'll start to fill in all of the gaps, all of the blanks, as they did today with Will Harris. That you're filling in a gap. Like, it's not a needle moving move. They clearly value Will Harris and his versatility. He can play a ton of positions, right? We've seen that throughout his career. I remember week 1 last year, he had an interception against the Panthers, on a poorly thrown football where he dove and caused an impressive catch. I remember seeing him with Detroit when we played against them. I remember seeing Will Harris out on the field. So it's a guy that can, play boundary corner, nickel corner, safety, which I think they've brought him in to be a safety. But he's a versatile guy. And I remember him being, uh, a solid player at Boston College. I think it was either 2019 draft, I believe, if I remember correctly. You do enough of those drafts, all of it starts to wash together. But I think he was 2019 out of BC. So he's talented. Don't get me wrong, but we kind of know what he is in the league at this point. Like, I don't think you're going to get to year 7 of Will Harris. If he was in the 19, I'm just going to go with 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. You're not going to get year 7. You're not going to get to year 7 of Will Harris, and all of a sudden he's going to play at a Pro Bowl level. I mean, it could happen, but the likelihood is it's not, right? We know what he is, what he isn't. So I think they like him for his versatility, because in a pinch, you saw what versatility did for us last year. Because of Mikey's versatility last year, you were able to take a guy and move him outside that was really supposed to play inside, and it saved our season, you could argue. That versatility, that type, and Noah Igbenogany, same deal, right? Noah went outside, Noah went inside, and that it helped save our season. So that kind of versatility is welcome. Now, I still want Noah Igbenogany back, and I hope they get that done. This should have no bearing nor impact on Noah Igbenogany being back. But this feels like the answer to moving on from Jeremy Chin. That's what this feels like. This doesn't feel like a cornerback move. It just feels like a guy that's super versatile, can give you a lot of different things, but this feels like an answer like, hey, we got a safety now, so we don't have to worry about that. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I'm just going to wait and see, right? I'm just going to wait and see. Rocky D, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. He says, do we have any more draft capital for Trey Hendrickson? Yeah, we still got a 2nd round pick. Hell, we still got a 1st round pick. I like the deal that somebody offered up yesterday. You trade your 1st round pick for Hendrickson, a 3rd and a 5th. I like that deal. I don't know if Cincinnati would go for it, but Trey Hendrickson, a 3rd rounder and a 5th rounder, and we'll give you our 1st round pick. The value in this year's draft is in day 2 is really where the value is. 2nd round, 3rd round, and maybe to a lesser extent, 4th round. After that, it is what it is. This is not an overly, there's not a ton of blue chips in this draft. It's a bunch of red chips. And the red chip you get at 29 is probably the same red chip you get at 44. So I don't mind trading back out of 29 or out of the pick altogether to get a guy like Trey Hendrickson that can help right now. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I don't. Is it still on the table that you could trade for Trey Hendrickson? Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. Day, been a member for 5 months. Really appreciate you. Who writes, McNichols is back. Is that so? Is that so? Let's check and see. Because y'all be lying to me all the time. So I can't even trust y'all no more. Stuck at the DMV. All right. I think I'm late on my Hold on. So we're getting some news on why James Palmer is telling us why the Texans traded Laramie Tunsil. Let's see if it makes any sense. He might just tell us what we already knew. Like it was dumb.
He gets traded from the Texans, one of the best left tackles in all of football, still one of the best left tackles in all of football. So that's why this was such a shocker, considering they want to protect C.J. Stroud in Houston. It was a big priority for this offseason to revamp that offensive line. And what do they do first? They move the stalwart out of that group in Laramie Tunsil. And what ends up happening is Houston receives a 3rd and a 7th in 2025, a 2nd and a 4th in 2026. The Commanders get Laramie Tunsil and a 4th round pick. Now, obviously, the Commanders had some money to spend. They were looking at the tackle market. Them and the Chiefs and the Patriots and others were in on Ronnie Stanley. But when Ronnie Stanley returned back to the Baltimore Ravens before free agency even began, everybody kind of pivoted in a different way. And so what ended up happening was some teams pivoted to Dan Moore and overpaid, in my opinion. Other teams looked in other directions. Washington looked at what are the best left tackles available? Can we make something happen? And they did. They acquire extra protection for Jaden Daniels. That was their goal. And they get a very, very good player. Here's the rub in the situation, as I've talked to people last night about this entire ordeal. Laramie Tunsil is going to want a new contract. He's going to want a 3rd contract. Maybe it's his 4th. Maybe it's his 5th. I don't know. At 31, he wants a new contract. Houston was never going to give him another contract. They have C.J. Stroud on the horizon. They have Derek Stingley Jr., one of the best corners in all of football. And we saw the cornerback market skyrocket, right, with the J.C. Horn deal after the Patrick Surtain deal. So they know they had that to pay. They have Will Anderson to pay. They were never going to give him the next contract. So that's one part of it. He led the NFL in penalties with 17. Nobody else was even close. I think Deion Dawkins had 14. He had 12 false starts, 17 penalties total. They have a new offensive coordinator, new offensive thought process, and they really just kind of thought it was time. The Texans do believe he's still very, very good. And they do believe also that maybe his best years are behind him. But there's another aspect of this for Houston in terms of philosophy and culture and what they wanted to change. My understanding is this. They want to revamp that entire offensive line room in Houston. It got really bad, even off the field in that room through the course of the season, I'm told. And what they wanted to do is look at the way they've built that defensive line. That's a bunch of maulers and physical, glass-eating type of guys, as is the term that people use. And they want that same identity to be on their offensive line. And that's why they want new leadership, new culture, new pretty much everything in that group, as well as you saw that Kenyon Green gets traded to the Eagles as well to further show you where Houston's thinking is in terms of taking their offensive line. So now they have more capital to try to rebuild that offensive line. They're not better. We'll say that. Houston is not better as an offensive line without Laramie Tunsil. That's clear. But what DeMeco Ryans is looking for is how he's going to build the identity of that offensive line that they believe just did not live up to what they expected it to be. And now they regroup and revamp that entire thing. That's what ended up happening. They like it or hate it. C.J. Stroud is less protected. Jaden Daniels is more protected. But what DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio are trying to build in Houston is...
All right. So nothing... If you're a Commanders fan, nothing there was terrifying or things you didn't already know. That was more from a Houston Texans perspective of why they traded him. I was just making sure there wasn't any smoking gun here. Like, wait a minute, what did you just say? Like, they knew what in Houston, or this is how they felt about it. Nothing there was scary. So nothing has changed in the way I feel about that deal. Feel like we got a good football player. Veteran Jeremy McNichols is re-signing with the Commanders on a 1-year deal per source. Okay. No, I'm not surprised by that, are you? Again, he and Olamide Zaccheaus are the two dudes I told you that DQ couldn't stop gushing about as culture setters last year. Again, just because they re-signed him on a 1-year deal doesn't mean he has to make the team. Okay. Let's make that abundantly clear. The only way this would piss me off, right? And we're a long ways from this, if they do nothing at running back in the draft. They brought back Chris Rodriguez. They brought back Jeremy McNichols. And if you just run it back with the running back room like you're doing with the tight ends, which I'm okay with the tight ends. I'm not okay with that with the running backs. If you just run it back with the running backs, I'll be pissed off. I'll be absolutely livid. And I don't expect them to do that. Just like I wanted them to do something on the offensive line, I wasn't sure, but they saw it the way that I saw it. Like they watched this team just like I watched this team, like you watched this team. They understand what this team needs. Trust me, they're not going to just run it back with the running backs like they are with the tight ends. I saw no issues with the tight ends other than if Zach Ertz gets hurt or something happens to him, we're screwed because none of the other guys have shown the ability to be targets for Jaden Daniels that he can go to. So that's the only thing you worry about. But I've already said this. You can't fix everything in one offseason. And if the tight end position isn't broken right now, you don't need to necessarily fix it. So I'm not shocked that they're running the tight end room back. What I am, and I told you, they like Colson Yankoff. And I said this to you guys multiple times. I said it on the Commanders Kings program. I said it on the Command Post a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago or so now. Don't count out the guys that are already in the building. You know, guys that were on the practice squad, guys that were undrafted last year, guys that they brought in here that they've been developing. Like, don't sleep on some of these guys. We just assume out of sight, out of mind, those guys don't exist. We need this, we need that, we need that, we need this. They may be like, no, we're good here. We like this guy. Like, they like Colson Yankoff at tight end. So they really don't feel like tight end is as big a need as maybe we do. They have some guys on the practice squad that they're going to continue to work with. Corner may not, they may really like some of these corners that they have on the practice squad. And so they may be like, corner's not as big of a need as you think it is, right? We may be able to go out here and draft one, but it's not as big of a need as you think it is. I beg to differ. And I see proof that it's not, it's an issue, right? But ultimately, McNichols being back here, and you remember, up until the fumble, I think a lot of fans, and I may have been somewhat impacted by that fumble. That it really pissed me off. I'm not gonna front. I got to a point in the season, it might have been like week 13, week 14. Matter of fact, it was the Falcons game. I think it was the Falcons game. When he caught that fourth down pass, had to fight, then stretch to get the first down. And after that game, when we clinched the playoff spot, I think I said, I wouldn't mind Jeremy McNichols being back next year. And I told y'all I wouldn't mind. And I've said that numerous times. I wouldn't mind him being back. But if it's at the expense of adding more speed to the running back position, no, he can't come back. Right? And I think we're all in agreement on that. But McNichols does so many things. He plays special teams. He adds value to this roster. But again, I want dynamic playmaking ability from the running back position. And if you're going to bypass that because you re-signed Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols, I'm going to be pissed off. So I don't see that happening. So I don't have any issues with McNichols. You can sign a guy to a one-year deal. They signed James Pierre last year to a one-year deal and they cut him, right? He didn't make the team. So this isn't, all this ensures is that you're a part of the 90-man roster when they head to camp. That's all that deal does. If this was a 2-year deal, then you go, whoa, wait a minute, right? Chris Rodriguez, same thing, right? He's back because he was a restricted free agent. So he's back. They tendered him. He's back. And he cannot make this team. And they could try and stash him away on the practice squad again, which I know he would hate, but that's life, right? So this doesn't preclude you from taking it back. And that's all I care about. I still think they're going to take a running back. One thing that they've shown me over the first year and a half of being here is they get it, right? They get it. Their number one priority this offseason was getting better in the trenches on both sides and protecting Jaden Daniels. And they've done that with the move to get Laramie Tunsil. So they've shown the ability that they understand. Now let's see what else they do. McNichols is definitely back, Day. Spot on. They've brought back Jeremy McNichols on a one-year deal. Let me check the news. If there's nothing else, we can get out of here. It's been a slow day, news-wise. Really thought that we'd see more activity than we've seen today. I thought today would be just as busy as yesterday, just on a much smaller scale in terms of the amount of money handed out. But I thought we'd see some of those second level, receivers and edge rushers, some of the older guys. And a lot of times when you're talking older guys, they kind of got to wait. Some of those older guys may not even find teams and homes until after the draft. So, because that's what a lot of is left, right? There's some guys, that are still, of solid age that you can sign, but it's a lot of age, a lot of aging veterans that are left. So, actually, thought we'd see a little bit more activity league wide today. It's pretty quiet today, actually. Pretty quiet today. All right. Let's see. Okay. I see nothing else. So we will get out of here. I've got some some press conferences to watch as some of the guys we re-signed, Bates and Zach Ertz, did press conferences after they signed. So I am going to check out those, and I don't see any other activity other than Tiger Woods tearing his Achilles, which I don't know about you, but I'm not checking for Tiger Woods anymore. His career's done. I mean, when's the last time Tiger Woods was relevant? Why should I care that Tiger Woods tore his Achilles? And I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm not happy that he tore his Achilles, but why do I care again? His time is gone. It's come and gone. And he was, I can say this with, and this is where we'll end the show, and this has nothing to do with nothing. If you consider golfers athletes, I struggle with that sometimes. Because I don't think golfers are athletes any more than bowlers are athletes, right? It's a skill, right? That you can work on, you can hone, you can sharpen, you can get better at. But athleticism comes from the word athlete, which talks about physical prowess, right? The ability to do something physically, jump, run, golfers swing a club. You can be 300 pounds and be an excellent bowler or golfer. I mean, you could be 300 pounds and be an excellent offensive lineman, but you also have to be a tremendous athlete to do that, right? But anyway, that's a different conversation. Tiger Woods was the most dominant athlete I've ever seen in my life. More than Michael Jordan, more than Shaq, more than any other player that you can think of that has been dominant in their particular sport. The closest thing that comes to Tiger Woods is Mike Tyson. Tiger Woods would win events before he even swung the club once. Mike Tyson would win fights when Mike Tyson would meet with his opponent at the center of the ring as they're getting the ring instructions from the referee. He had already won the fight. Guys were intimidated. They were scared shitless of Mike Tyson. Same thing with Tiger Woods. But that was 30 years ago. That was 30 years ago. That was in 1996, right? What is that? Is 20 years ago? 2000? Yeah, 30 years ago. 30 years ago. I'm about to say it can be 20 years ago. It's 1996. Tiger Woods burst onto the scene and was dominant probably up until like maybe 2008, maybe 2010, somewhere in there, maybe. And then after that, what are we talking about? So why do I care? Why do I care if Tiger Woods tore his Achilles? At what is Tiger Woods? He's got to be 50-something years old. What are we talking about here, man? Why are you sending me alerts that Tiger Woods tore his Achilles at his home? Why do I care? Anyway, I digress. Let's get out of here. We got nothing else. If you're a Commanders fan, I will see you later on this evening. We will talk about the Will Harris signing. We will talk about what's next for the Commanders. If nothing else happens, you guys know every time I get off of a stream, something happens. It happened again last night. I said, if this ain't the most crazy cockamamie witchcraft bullshit I've ever seen. Soon as I got off last night, I sit down, I grab me some refreshments, right? Grab me some cashews and some almonds, and I sit down and I start looking at my phone, and God damn it, if Cornelius Lucas ain't signed a 2-year, $10 million deal with the goddamn Cleveland Browns, and I almost shit myself. Something's about to happen because I'm getting off the stream. We'll talk about that tonight as well. Anyway, I digress. You guys get out of here. Take care. I'll see you guys next time. Probably be back again tomorrow, more likely than not. It's the new year. All right. It's New Year's Eve. So I'll probably be back tomorrow. But I digress. JD Sports Talk. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. JD writes, that Giants secondary is looking young and legit. They got Marquand Manuel to coach up Deonte Banks. We'll see if he's salvageable. He seems like a lost cause. He's talented, but he seems like a lost cause. We'll see. Don't like his attitude at all. 0 on the attitude meter. Holland, Nubin, Drew Phillips, Adebo, all 6'1" DBs. Yeah, that's a tough lineup right there. And if they could get Deonte Banks to get his shit together, yeah, that's a hell of a secondary. You're not bullshitting there. A lot of talent with Drew Phillips in the slot as a nickel, Adebo and Banks on the outside. If Banks can get his shit together, that is a hell of a group right there, if I may say so myself. We'll see what they're able to get out of Banks and the rest of those guys. See what Drew Phillips does for an encore, because last year he was pretty dynamic. Now, he was dynamic as a tackler. I think he can be had in coverage, but damn, he was really good. Adebo, we know about what he can be. Also, a little handsy down the field. And so we'll see what they have. Again, on paper, it looks really good. I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. Abel Ambrosio, been a member for 28 months. My guy, Abel, writes, new Commanders log tonight. Are you telling me or are you asking me? You telling me or you asking me? I doubt that there would be one. What would it be on? Would it be on the combine? What would it be on? But they've been releasing just random, like they did the like the story of Jaden Daniels or whatever it was. It was the season of Jaden Daniels. So that was pretty dope. So who knows what we're getting if we get something. But we haven't had a Commanders log in forever. So, and normally they don't start the Commanders logs. Well, we actually had the Senior Bowl already, so maybe because normally they don't start the Commanders logs until we get like the Senior Bowl and all of that shit. But normally that's an off-season thing, like well into the off-season when we start getting Commanders logs episodes. So I doubt it. I doubt it. But we might get something. You know, the team has been killing the game. The team has been killing it all season. So wouldn't put it past them, but I don't think we're getting anything. I digress. Also, keep an eye out for Michael Gallup. Remember, he's supposed to be meeting with the team today. We'll see if anything comes about that. I wouldn't hate that signing. I don't love it. But we said we wanted a veteran receiver. That's what he would qualify as. So we'll see what happens. I don't think they're done today. I refuse to believe that Will Harris is their only signing on day 2 of the tampering period, and then that's it. Again, they're not done in free agency. So we'll see what else happens. I think we'll have some things to chew on later on tonight. So I will definitely see you later on tonight for the Commanders log. I mean, got me saying Commanders log. The command post. And if there is a new Commanders log, Abel, if there is a new Commanders log tonight, as you say, I mean, I don't know if you're asking me or you're telling me. You might be telling me. If you're telling me, I'll watch it before the show, and then I'll talk about that as well tonight on the stream. So it'll be twofold. We can knock out multiple things at once. But I do not think they're done today. So we'll see what else gets done. But that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. And I think we'll ultimately be back on tomorrow for another episode of the podcast, as it's the start of the new league year. I talked to the Commanders Kings. We should be good to go for tomorrow night as well. So I think you'll see me over there too. So with that said, you guys have a good one. Take care. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.